Bonjour la classe. On va parler des pronoms d'objet direct aujourd'hui. So we'll be talking about direct object pronouns. Before you start the video or continue the video, please print out the direct object note-taking sheet. And you will be taking notes on that, filling in the blanks. So take a minute to do that. All right, now we are going to talk about objet direct. So it really does help to know the English parts of speech and how they're used, but a lot of you may still struggle with that. So I'm kind of counting on some of that prior knowledge. So you might find that you need to spend more time, maybe in some of the supplemental material reviewing. But let's just get to the basics. If you have it, then you might want to accelerate, and I'll give you some materials to do that later. But let's just go ahead and make sure we're all on the same page. So direct objects. In English, a direct object is the person or thing in a sentence that receives the action of the verb. So we're not talking about the pronoun now, we're just talking about a direct object. So every sentence has a subject, a verb, and then many have a direct object. And there's different names for that, but we're talking here about the receiver of the verb. So it receives the action. I hit the ball. I am hitting, the ball is being hit, it's receiving the action. Bob drops the book. Bob does the dropping, the book receives the action. And then Bob watches me. Bob is the one watching, I am the one receiving it. So it answers the question, what or who in the sentence. Okay, what or who is receiving the verb? Exemple en anglais. Let's look at some examples just so we're clear in English what it means and where you put it. I'm going to keep referring to Spanish. If you have Spanish, it's almost better to go from Spanish to English because all this time we're spending on the structures and where the structures go will be slightly different. So on all three languages, the subject, verb, object is the same. Okay, so let's look at some examples. I invite my friends. I invite who? My friends. So we're finding the direct object. Again, not the pronoun. We are eating a cake. We are eating what? A cake. Claire invited Pierre on a date. Claire invited who? She invited Pierre. They are listening to their iPods. They are listening to what? Their iPods. So again, asking the question, who is receiving the verb? There's the person doing it, that's the subject, and the person receiving it or the thing receiving it is the object. And in this case, a direct object. Because the direct objects usually come after the verb that it is directed to. So I invite my friends comes after the verb when we are using the direct object and not a pronoun. Adjectives and adverbs and articles may come between a verb and its direct object, which is a little different in English. The order is different. The library has interesting books. The car company will introduce a new truck this month. So the adjective or the adverb doesn't change who it is. It just describes a little bit more about the direct object. So note that the direct object can be several words to describe one object. So interesting books is the entire direct object. A new truck is the entire direct object, all three words. So in English, you've got the subject, the verb, and the object. The subject is usually the person doing, the actor. Might be Jenny. It could also be a thing, but generally verbs are that have direct objects. The subject is a person. The verb is the thing done. It's the action. So Jenny loves. And the object is the thing that has something done to it. Okay, so it's passive in this case, a thing that's acted upon, and she loves painting. So what does she love? Painting. Subject plus verb plus direct object. So she ate a hot dog. Careful, this pattern works only with transitive verbs, meaning I can actually have an object. So something that can receive a verb. The verb can be transferred to it. That's what a transitive verb is. Okay. So if you want to know more about the English and maybe spend a little bit more time with it, you can go into there's a link on your note-taking sheet, so you can go and explore that a little bit more. Okay, so the next page, we're going to talk about French. So here's our sentence, and we're going to find the direct object. Again, starting very basic. So Pierre is doing the action, décore un sapin de Noël. Pierre décore quoi? He's decorating what? Un sapin de Noël. So you're just going to write the direct object. It's really that simple. Patrick is doing the action, invite. Anne is being invited. À la fête. Patrick invite qui? Anne. Nous fêtons le nouvel an. Nous fêtons quoi? Le nouvel an. So the whole thing. Le nouvel an. Vous attendez votre ami. You are waiting for your friend. You are waiting for who? Vous attendez qui? Your friend, votre ami. Les enfants, subject, offrent, verbe, les fleurs. Quoi? Ils offrent quoi? Les fleurs. Richard regarde les filles. Il regarde qui? Il regarde les filles. So I hope you're getting it. I know it's repetitive, but really you need to understand this before we can go on to the pronouns. Ma mère allume les bougies. Elle allume quoi? Les bougies. She's lighting the candles. So mother is lighting. She is doing the verb. Les bougies are receiving the light. And je déteste Bob. I am doing the action. I detest who? Bob. So direct objects, the thing or person in French, also follow the verb just as they do as English, but a direct object pronoun comes before. So this is why we really want to understand what they are before we go on, because now it's going to be different. Okay, so hopefully you understand all of those. That should be simple, but going on to the pronouns, it gets a little bit more confusing. So let's go ahead and practice finding the direct objects. So on your paper, you should have the boxes filled out, and then you're going to go to the questions. And we're not going to answer them yet. So the questions are actually on the next page. So go ahead and turn the page, and you'll see the questions. Okay, so this is on page 3 of your notes. And you're not going to answer them right now. You're just going to go through each question and underline the direct object. So you should be on page 3. So you're skipping ahead a little bit. And note that nouns are either masculine or feminine. And in order to know what pronoun is used, le or la, we need to know the gender. So just note that. It is important. So the first sentence, tu connais Stromé. So I am doing the action, I know. Tu connais, or you, tu connais. Stromé is the object. Who do you know? So you should underline Stromé. So go ahead and find the object in each of those sentences. So you should have underlined Stromé, and it should look like that. So go ahead and do number 2 through 6. I'll give you a minute to do that, or you can pause the video, and then we'll go through them to see how you did. Okay, so let's see. Tu is doing the action, connais la chanson. Know the song, elle me dit dédicat, and all of that. So you should underline the whole thing. And on your sheet, it just says la chanson, but la chanson, elle me dit de Mika. So that is the whole thing. Do you know the song, elle me dit, that Mika sings? And I would answer just with one. Yes, I know it. Okay. Tu préfères Zaz? Do you prefer Zaz? Tu veux? Tu subject, veux. And then son dernier album. So you should underline son dernier album. And then last 2, vous écoutez souvent vos profs. Souvent is often, and I don't need to, that's not the subject. That is, so I listen to who? My professors often. And then lastly, tu fais souvent les devoirs, and I should underline les devoirs. All right, so subject, verb, object. There can be other little words in there as well, but that is, we want to make sure we know what the direct object is. So now go back to page 2, and we're going to go ahead and fill in the rest. So a pronoun is a word that replaces another noun. I hope you know this, but it doesn't, we are talking about direct object pronouns, but it could be a subject pronoun. So a subject pronoun, Pierre is going, he is going, he is a subject pronoun. We are talking about the object pronouns, which is why we need to know what those direct objects are. So Wouldn't it be nice if instead of repeating the direct object, est-ce que tu connais Stromae? Oui, je connais Stromae. Stromae est bien. Stromae est j'aime bien Stromae, etc. Okay, we would replace it with another word. So pronouns make it so that we can speak in a more advanced way, in a more easier way to be understood. And the word would be called a direct object pronoun when it comes directly after the verb. Again, there are different types of pronoun. We are talking about the objects which come after the verb. You can have a subject pronoun, you can have an object pronoun, and we're talking about direct object pronouns. So hopefully you know now what a direct object is. So now we can use the pronouns. In French, all of the nouns have a gender and a number, and the pronoun corresponds to that. So for masculine singular, you'll use le. For masculine plural, the pronoun would be les. For feminine singular, you would be la. And for masculine, you would be les. So these correspond to lo and los, I believe, in Spanish. And so the same kind of thing in Spanish, we would use, I believe, la, lo, les, or los. So my Spanish. So now let's go back to the next page. Hopefully you've completed. If not, go back and make sure that you have completed the page 2. And now back to page 3, we're going to go ahead and figure out what pronoun we use. Okay, so let's do the first one together. So Stromae is masculine. I actually told you that just in case you don't know. You should know who Stromae is. Go listen to his music if you don't. And so we're going to replace that with the singular masculine, which would be le. Okay. When we put it, we're going to go back and do this last row next. Okay, and we're just going to fill in je le connais, because where does it come? It comes before. Okay, so you can just copy down je le connais and fill in that blank. Okay, so just go ahead and do 2 through 6. You can pause the video and then come back and we'll correct them together, and then we'll talk more about where it goes. Okay, so 2, la chanson's féminine. So we would write je la connais, I know her. Tu préfères Zaz, Zaz is a woman, so you are going to put la, je la préfère. Tu veux son dernier album, do you want her last album? And le, we see that it's son, S-O-N, which is a possessive pronoun, and it is her in this case. It goes with son dernier album. We know it's masculine, so it would be je le veux. Then finally, vous écoutez vos profs. You listen to your teachers, and notice that it's directly after. So I'm using a direct pronoun. We'll talk more about indirect objects, which is what écouter or listen to takes in English. So they're sometimes different, direct or indirect. So nous les écouter. And then finally, les devoirs is masculine. Et nous les, that should say vous. Sorry, so you should have vous there. Vous les faites souvent. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the placement. If you notice, they came before. Okay, they're different than in English. In English, well, we'll go over it in a minute. Okay, so object pronouns generally come before the conjugated verb when there is one subject and one verb, meaning there's not a second verb, which we'll go over, like j'aime écouter mon prof, j'aime l'écouter. So when there's just one subject, one verb that's conjugated, it'll come before the conjugated verb. They follow the same rules as in Spanish, but not in English. They are different. So, for example, in Spanish, you would say, well, it's te llamo and not yo amo tu. Okay, so it's the same. So in French, you would say I, you, la, I listen, je t'écoute, I listen to you. So notice that it's different. Il m'aime, he loves me, or he me loves. Je l'adore, I adore her or him, can't tell. Not I him adore. However, when there are two verbs, meaning the infinitive construction, and I'll show you some examples, it is often before the second verb, because the infinitive verb, because that is the verb referring to the direct object, meaning that is the object, the verb that's being directed towards the object. So j'aime t'écouter, I like to listen to you. So the receiving of listening is you. Il va le faire. He will, or he's going to do it. So le is going to refer to faire. Je vais la voir. I am going to see her. La voir, voir is see is receiving the action. Okay. So the near future is when you'll use it the most, and that is the infinitive construction. So the object comes before the verb if it is the object of, which is usually the second verb or the infinitive. So here's some more examples. Je vais voir le film. Je vais le voir. I'm going to see what? I'm going to see it, not I'm going to see. Another example. Je veux vendre ta voiture. I want to sell what? La voiture. So sell is the verb that is directed towards the object, not veut. Je veux la vendre. I want to sell it, not I want it, but I want to sell it. And that should say sell, not see. So you can correct that. Il veut écouter. He wants to listen to who? He wants to listen to you. Not he wants you listen, but he wants to listen to you. Nous allons vous attendre. We are going to wait for you, not we are going you. Wait. Okay. So it comes before the verb that it is the direct object comes before the verb that it is referring to, okay, or that it is directed to. Okay, so you should have the second, third page all the way filled out. If you missed any, you can go back and look at those. And let's go to questions, which it looks like I went in the row. Let's go to imperative commands. That's your next section. So in the affirmative commands, the pronoun comes after, just like in English. So regarde-la, look at her. Écoutez-le, listen to him. So the imperative is the command form, and the subject pronoun has disappeared. So just like in English, you don't say, you look at her. You say, look at her. And in French, you don't say, you look at her. Regarde-la. So the subject pronoun has disappeared because it's the command form. Me is going to change to moi, and tu is going to change to toi. So you'd say, écoutez-moi, listen to me. The subject is implied, vous. The verb is listen, and the object receiving the listening is you, or moi. Okay, écoutez-moi. Negative commands are the same. They come before. Ne la regarde pas. Don't look at her. Okay? So that's the imperative commands. Now let's look at questions. I need to go back. Let's look at questions. So in questions, the object comes before the verb. So with est-ce que, it just looks just the same, but sometimes you use inversion, like la voyez-vous. And because it's just going to come right before the verb that it is the object of, okay? So la voyez-vous. The verb is voir in the second example, and it comes right before voir. Est-ce que tu le vois? Do you see her? L'avez-vous vu? Have you seen her? It's coming before, and we'll talk about the past more, coming before the verb, which is avez-vous vu? And then aimez-vous le faire? It's coming before that verb that it is an object of. So do you like? To do it, and to do is receiving it, okay? So that's where it comes. And then au passé composé, it's a little confusing because some of you are still struggling with the passé composé, but it's going to come before the entire verb, meaning the helping verb and the past participle. So not in between, but before. And it also is going to have to agree in number. Okay, so it comes before the auxiliary, which is also the helping verb. So here are your examples. Je l'ai vu. I saw him. Il m'a invité. He saw me. Tu les as oubliés. You forgot them. And you'll notice that there's an S because the past participle must agree with the direct object that comes before. So it's like an adjective as far as agreement goes. This will be more for honors, but be aware that there will be agreement. So let's look at that. So direct objects in feminine, you have to add an E. Ma voiture, je l'ai vendue. I sold it. You can't hear it in this case, but it is there when you're writing. If it's masculine, plural, you have to add an S. Mes amis, je les ai invités. If it's feminine, plural, you have to add an es. Mes lunettes, je les ai oubliées. I forgot them. Rarely can you hear it, but you can with verbs like prendre. La photo, je l'ai prise. I took it. So just be aware of that, and in honors, you'll be responsible to do that on the quiz. Okay? All right, so that is the end of your note-taking sheet. So if you missed anything, you can go ahead and go back and look at those. Oh, no, and then I'm going to just briefly kind of give you a big picture. So the direct objects can be me, te, nous, vous, but also le, la, les. So those are the ones that we have to really, like when we use him, her, them, or it, you have to decide if it's le, la, or les. You also have to decide between direct and indirect, which is what we'll do next. But the direct objects are me, te, nous, vous, le, la, les. The indirect objects, and we'll talk again more about that, are me, te, nous, vous, same, and lui or leur, which is to someone. Okay, so that is, just be aware of that. And we'll talk again about placement. We'll talk about on, which is replacing de plus something, and finally y. So those are the other direct object pronouns that we'll be talking about. So that's what you have to look forward to. And go ahead, and if there are any questions, please write them down so that when we're together, you can ask the questions. I'm sure other people will have them as well. And we will be, and you kind of make sure that you're understanding those before we go on to the next level. So you'll have some practice with those, and it takes a while to kind of get them, but you'll get it. All right. See you in class.